Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Don't Get Mad, Go Make Money segment. I'm Kirsten, and I'm excited to talk about peace today. When I was thinking about this segment and I was thinking about what I wanted the theme to be, I really want to talk about how peace is work. Peace is work. And the reason being is because I am somebody who I get what I call a lot of healing high performers. So usually they identify with being someone that burned out in their business, in their life, and then shut it all down and is rebuilding.
Why are you acting like this isn't you? This was you. Like you're like, I just attract these people somehow.
Tell your story.
Way.
Tell a little
Peace
bit of
is
your
work,
story.
everybody. Peace is work. When you have these friends.
Tell your story.
No, I'm gonna get into it. Thank you so much.
We're already into it.
Thank you so much. No, I attract a lot of healing high performers because I was one. They tend to burn their stuff down. And what happens is, and I call it like, it's the pipeline. This is what happens. They burn it all down and then they don't want to work because they're scared that work equals burnout. And they no longer trust themselves to put forth, to like exert themselves in their business because that could result in burnout. And what I was getting to, thank you so much, was my story, which is what I went through. First of all, I have a long history of burnout. I have burned out multiple times in every area of my life, in college, in my 9-to-5, and in my business. So I've burned out majorly 3 times. And specifically, once I hit the 3rd time with the business, because I thought the business was going to save me. Like, I thought the business was like, it's not going to happen here because I got a flexible schedule. And I have everything I want. I have more money than ever. It felt like it changed then. And that's when I was like, I'm scared to work. Like, I'm scared that I had physical effects. To this day, I have burn marks on my stomach from the stress. I went through a ton of different health things. And, so like I've been there with a lot of my clients. And so they're so scared to work. And what I find is I feel like this is such a good segment for you all to be on because I think we all identify, like we all have a burnout story. But what I've learned is people search for peace by not working when you need to work for peace. And so let's start there. Like, I want to hear y'all's burnout stories. I want to start there.
You said you don't need to work for peace. I think you've also shown that you can work and still be at peace. And I think that for me, as someone who is a high achiever, is something that I needed to learn. Because I came from a background where I was like pre-med, always had multiple jobs, always was like volunteering. Like, I was never home, and I was always trying to like build my resume to do all of the things. And funny enough, when I decided that was like no longer my career path and I started my business, I also was like bringing those tendencies on, and I would freak out when I didn't have a full work day.
I feel like, and I'm going to get a little
I'm
something.
excited because I've been doing research. Let's talk about it.
No, I'm super curious because I feel like some people had a long day and then they're burnt out.
Let's talk
They had
about
a hard week, then they're burnt out.
I'm glad you said that because the reason why I wanted to preface this with my story of like I understand the physical effects. I understand. I have been
when I hear your story, I hear burnout.
Right.
When your body
there have been
shuts
physical effects,
down.
totally.
Right.
But I am writing a book on burnout. You all know that. And I've been doing research on the definition of burnout, on the signs of burnout, on the recovery process of burnout, and all these things. And one of the definitions was fascinating to me because it felt petty. Burnout is just disengagement. And I was like, as someone that has scars on me, I'm like, so it's just disengagement? But that's actually like all it is disengagement. And what happens is we don't know how to get re-engaged. We don't know how to re-engage ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that results in fatigue. and that fatigue drains our capacity. And then we get into like the deeper, you know, physical effects and things like that. But to your point, I think burnout culture, which is the culture of like, you know, like you said, I had a long day, like I'm so burned out, or like I worked 40 hours this week, I'm so burned out, whatever. Burnout culture will have you thinking you're burned out over the slightest thing. And I actually believe that it creates more burnout.
Right.
I think and I have this from experience and helping so many people heal from burnout in my company. I honestly, the more you like indulge in the burnout of it all, the more you burn yourself out.
Totally.
Right.
And I did that. I actually see that in my first 2 rounds where I'm like, the whole time I was like, I'm burned out. Like I walked around like a burnout, you know, just a burnout baddie. And
let's not
I just walked
make
around
it look like it's a hot girl
no.
thing.
I was always acting like I was just burnt out. And that burned me out more than anything. That burned me out. I was working a nice, happy job, had a happy little schedule. That burned me out more than anything. And so for sure, I think burnout culture does it. But yeah, it's burnout. My favorite definition is it's just disengagement.
I really like that. And the first thing that came to my mind, I have 2 things that came up, but the first thing that came up in my mind is, what does passionate work look like? Like, what actually is passionate? Like, when I think about it, when I was side hustling, I had a 3-hour commute by bus every single day. I was working on my business. I was also planning a wedding. I was doing a ton of inner work, and I was not burnt out. I was passionately working. And so I think people need to know what the difference is. And I think it is when you are engaged and when you are plugged into what you're doing and you care about what you're doing, you won't have that inclination to be like, oh my God, I'm burnt out.
To the point of passionate work, something that I wanted to say, and Jasmine touched on this, where it's like I talk a lot about in my business how you can work hard peacefully. And it's because I actually think all of us, especially entrepreneurs, want to work. We want to work. We want to work hard. We love work. We want to be passionate about our work. But we need the capacity and the peace to work peacefully. Like, it sounds meta, but like you need the peace to work peacefully. And I think, you know, it's not about whenever. So I talk about the healing high performers that come to me. It's funny when they get out of the kind of like, I'm scared to work pipeline, then they're like, listen, I don't want to not work. Because when I talk about having calendar space and things like that, they're like, I don't want to not work. I want to work. So I think fundamentally, we all want to work and we want to work hard. We just need capacity to work peacefully, to work passionately, and all those things.
What is the work we're supposed to do, and why do people work hard? Why do people work too hard? And like, what is the difference? What is the delineation?
I think people don't realize what productive work is and what hard work is. And this was like kind of me filling up my calendar space, like what I was speaking on earlier. I was, quote unquote, working hard. Probably, let's say if I worked 10 hours a day, 3 hours of those were technically productive. So I think like what's filling up your calendar and taking your time. And I think that's the quicker way to feel disengaged because you're also not seeing result. I think typically there's almost like this dopamine hit from like productive work compared to hard work where like, I got this done. I was able to accomplish this. Like, there's like a result from it. Versus like hard work just feels tiring and taxing and you're not getting anything out of that.
So it's funny because going back to like the research I've been doing on burnout, it's often we're just literally fatigued. Like we're just fatigued. Hard work at the end of a hard day, I think about like if you do physical labor, you are going to be fatigued. You're going to be tired, physically tired. But I think the more we make that a problem instead of allow it, like, oh, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm going to sleep in or whatever it is. The more we allow it, the better and the less we burn out instead of being like, this is like unsustainable. This fatigue is unsustainable when no, it's actually like the body doing what the body does.
Or fighting it too.
Yeah.
I
Totally.
think too, you're working wrong when you are working, but it's not producing a result.
Right.
Yes.
So if it's not producing a result, that means that you're working wrong. So I think that's where the burnout happens. Like, I remember I've had so many situations where I was like on the brink of burnout simply because I did not have the result that I wanted. And then my brain went to, well, then why did you work so hard? Why did you put all this together? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you launch? Why did you do this? You shouldn't have done it. It was too much. It didn't even work. But it was only because I didn't have the result that I wanted. And so if I worked hard and I had the result that I wanted, I think it would have been a lot more easier. Or I have this friend where she was burnt out, but she only made $50,000 that year. I said, you wouldn't have said you were burnt out if you made $250,000.
It's funny you say that because I think it goes back to, we will increase our chances of burnout when we, I don't know if this is the right word, but like negotiate and get mad at our past selves. So I think about myself this year. You know that I spent 4 months doing work that I did not like. And the whole afterward, I was just like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe, and to your point, it's because I didn't get the result I wanted. It's because I didn't get that. That's the only reason. And I was like, I can't believe I did that. What a waste of my time. What a waste of my energy. I'm better than this. I'm above this. And what did it do? It took me out for 2-3 months, 2-3 months of extreme fatigue because I fatigued myself by shaming myself over what I did. And I think a lot of times we start fighting with our past selves rather than, because I think even if you don't, there's going to be times where you're not always productive, always doing the work that you love doing, always producing results. That's going to happen. You're going to work hard at something and not like the end of it, but you will brush it off and move on so much quicker, both physically and emotionally, when you don't fight with yourself about and tell yourself it was a waste of time and tell yourself it was a waste of energy. That does more to your nervous system than anything.
How can someone avoid burnout as they're beginning to do new things? Because I notice sometimes, like when you're having to learn a new skill, learn how to operate differently in your business as your team grows, as your business grows, as you're creating a new offer. Sometimes it's, we talked about this before, like with the excitement marketing. I think that can get somebody on a high of like chasing after the result. And it isn't until things simmer down that I think people start being frustrated when things aren't working right away, despite quote unquote their hard work.
You have to, going back to disengagement versus engagement, you have to coach yourself to be engaged throughout the process. So you have to keep yourself engaged throughout the process. When you're trying something new, when you're doing something different, when you don't know if it's going to work, when you know it's going to work, but it's hard. It's really, really hard, right? You have to, and I've been coaching Dielle on this. I'm like, you got to keep yourself engaged in the process. Otherwise, by the end of it, you're going to burn out and throw the whole thing away. And I think that's what it is. Honestly, it's really how you're thinking about the work you're doing while you're working.
Not when you have the result.
Not when you have the result. It's all about, and honestly, I say this to my clients all the time. You could work 90 hours a week and not burn out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the issue when I go back to like burnout culture. It's like 90 hours a week. It's not sustainable. It's this. And I actually love Layla Hormozi. She's this super, super intense entrepreneur, but incredible. And she posted her calendar and it was, and I'm like all about peace. Like I'm the peace girl, right? So you would think I wouldn't resonate with it, but it was all back to back, everything, no space, 90 hours of work. And she was like, I am the happiest I've ever been. And I was like, yeah, because you can be. Mm-hmm. If you're engaged throughout the process and if you're consistently coaching yourself on being engaged, it's actually not the amount of work. It's more how you're working that keeps you from it. And I'm not talking how you're working like taking breaks versus not, versus meditating in the morning versus not. I'm talking about literally how you're thinking as you're working, what you're telling yourself while you're working. If you have to work for 40 hours, what are you saying the whole time? Are you saying, I hate how many calls I have to take. I hate how much I have to do this. I hate how much I have to do that. Then yeah, by the end of it, you're going to be even more tired than you already baseline would be physically. Because you're going to be tired regardless, but like you're going to increase the fatigue and you're going to increase the exhaustion by doing it.
I think to this conversation too, and this is something that the three of us talk about so often, how do you work not burnt out, so that engagement piece, but you also don't only do things that you like doing? So I think someone could be like, okay, I need to work, but it's all stuff I hate. How in the world am I supposed to be engaged?
Welcome to the club. I'm just like, it goes back to, we're all gonna hate some of the things that we have to do, and it goes back to, you still have the same, I'm gonna sound petty, you still have the same mouth that can tell yourself the same things that you tell yourself when you love your work. You can tell yourself, this isn't that bad.
You know what?
Oh, this is okay.
You romanticize it.
No, to your it's funny you say that. So it's so funny because romanticize your offer is for those that don't know, is a copywriting concept that I came up with to help you sell your offer better. But I apply it everywhere in my life. You can romanticize boring, terrible work. So for me, when I was in healthcare, I hated my job. Like, hated it. Absolutely hated it. It was gross. I was in healthcare. It was gross. It was messy. There's so many things to hate about it.
Can you see her in healthcare, Jasmine?
Scrubs, stethoscope, machines.
Absolutely not.
On the ICU. I mean, it was sad. It was everything, right? It was all the worst things in a job. But you know what? Every morning I'd go up to ICU, click the button, go up. And at the time I was living in Utah, and I would look at the mountains and I'd be like, look at my view. I have the best view. And oh my goodness, I'm like pushing my little machine and my cute scrubs. I got the cutest scrubs and I have the best view. And that was the hardest I had ever worked. I had gone from like a cushy, for anyone in healthcare, I went from a cushy outpatient job to a hospital job, which is like super intense physically. Hardest work I'd ever done in my life. Most I ever worked. I was doing 410s when I was not doing that back home.
What's a 410?
410s means 40 hours over
4
4 days.
10-hour shifts.
4 10-hour shifts. I was doing 410s instead of, a cushy part-time outpatient job like I used to do. Working harder than I ever did and less burned out. Less physically tired because I was romanticizing as I went. And I was telling myself, I'm so happy. For example, so happy I have a job that gives me the healthcare that it does. So happy that I get to, write up reports on my computer. I would just romanticize everything. I
think what I'm hearing too is gratitude, right?
Yes.
Gratitude that you got to that stage. Gratitude that you're there. I think that's a really big part of like burnout prevention. I even think about me and my relationship to working on evergreen funnels. I was definitely in the camp of, well, I'm not passionate about this, so I don't want to do it. And I avoided it way too long. And now I'm having to like catch back up to it. Yeah. And now I'm just like, wait a minute. I'm grateful that my business is at this stage for me to do this. I'm grateful that this is going to help me make more money. Like, it's been a journey trying to bring my brain back to gratitude. But I was grateful for the bus. I was grateful to be on the bus being like, oh my God, I don't have to drive. I don't have to put wear and tear on my already old car. I'm so grateful that I can just, it's free. It could take me to where I need to be. I think gratitude is a good step.
But not toxic positivity.
I was going to say,
right? There's
not.
a difference.
Yeah.
No. She said, I hated that job.
I'm
hated
like,
it.
Gratitude. I don't know.
Tell us. Tell us.
I was going to say, like, even to this moment, I think I still use, not to say I'm a spoiled brat or anything. I still am very grateful for what I've created. I think sometimes gratitude and for me, self-celebration go hand in hand. And I think that's something I struggle with, is celebrating myself. But what you said to me the other day when I was literally having a breakdown, you were like, you can afford to do this. You have the time to sit down and stress about this.
All my friends that aren't in the coaching industry think I'm so toxic because I'm like, you got the capacity to be sad. And you were like, let me be sad,
and
please.
That is so true because...
It is very true.
Yeah, no, it is.
Because during that time where my schedule was so back-to-back, so busy, I literally didn't even have time to go through my own grieving process, like when my mom passed, for example. I did not literally have the time to process emotions. And I feel like that's actually something that I've been having to relearn as I've opened up more calendar space, because it's just like, well, I got to keep it moving. I got to keep working. I got to, like, it was just a lot of suppression. And now, like, when you said that, I was like, I do need to be more grateful about this. But I think, like, how do you
And we're going to get to that in a minute, because I want to talk about how I had a client who said, your peace work is so unpeaceful. And we're going to talk about that because, yes, capacity will create some kind of unpeaceful feelings, but that's the point. What were you going to say, Dielle?
I was just laughing because we saw Jasmine crying, but I remember turning my head. It was the ankle that I was at. I remember turning my head. The skyline apartment with the sunset view,
fresh food. She had just cooked soup, homemade soup on the
kitchen,
thing.
Sky penthouse suite.
Literally,
she has this fleece over her.
Cozy apartment.
She looks beautiful,
stunning. She's in like a really
hair.
cute, expensive tracksuit thing.
It's
like
just
daily luxury,
name brand, everying, and she's just crying, and we're like
sobbing. And I'm like, you got the capacity.
You got all this money, like. So that's when she was talking about that. I flashed to that image, and I was like, "What world are we in?"
But I want to be clear about something, because going to the toxic positivity of it all. If you think I didn't complain to my friends after work, I'm talking about while I was working.
Yeah.
While I was working, I kept my brain engaged. But when I got home, I was like, I hate this job. I hate this life. Everything is terrible. And I'm sad.
You had capacity.
Right. I had capacity at the end of the day to not just go home and go to sleep, or I would work it out at the gym or whatever it was. I had capacity to process my emotions at the end of the day because I kept myself engaged throughout. Also, there's another option. You can give yourself like bridge beliefs, right? So, for example, and instead of lying to yourself and being like, this is wonderful, I love the ICU, it's so great. Instead, it's like, I can handle this for 8 hours. Like, I handle this every day for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And it could be, and there are days where that was me, where I was like, you know what, all I gotta do is clock in my shift and I'll be fine and I'll be okay. Same old thing every day. It's okay if your thoughts aren't positive or grateful. They can be neutral, but they just got to keep you engaged.
So, I'm laughing because my bridge thoughts, I'm like, I could be broke.
No.
I could be not living in my apartment.
Right.
I could be like back at a job or having to go back to school or what. Like, there are so many quote unquote worse situations. And I also, sometimes it's like, people that only focus on like worst case scenarios. I know that could get a little bit toxic too, but I think those are some bridge beliefs, as opposed to, I think I do more that than the gratitude.
Yeah. And that's okay. Like, that's totally okay. I'm more on the romanticizing spectrum, but like, it's okay if you're just keeping it,
but
neutral and simple.
I really do want to harp on, like, I think a lot of it is you simply don't like your results.
Yeah.
Like, you don't like your results. That's why you're burnt out. You don't like your results. But I did this series on my Instagram stories where I talked about if, like, the whole reason why you're anxious and why you're burnt out and tired is because you just didn't make the money that you made. And if you made the money that you made, you would be asleep. Like, you would be so peaceful that you would be asleep. Like, you would be relaxed. You would have everything taken care of.
Yeah.
So that it brings me to, like, when we were on the phone and we were talking about someone who didn't have the money that they wanted to have. Like, they literally didn't have funds. I think like something happened in their family and their like family member lost a position, lost a job. And they literally said that they don't have the capacity to sell and they don't have the capacity to make money. And we had this whole conversation on that's literally why they don't have money is because they're not working because of this whole toxic cycle on burning out. Like, making money will also heal your burnout.
To that point, going back to my client who was like, some of this peace work is not so peaceful. It's interesting because you want something I say a lot is like processing emotions and having the capacity to process emotions, even negative ones, will also heal your burnout. And when we think about peace, we think about frolicking in the, in the garden and
laptop lifestyle.
Flowers and laptop lifestyle. And we think of it that way, but peace is capacity. Peace is having space. Peace is being able to have hard conversations with yourself, to have hard conversations with the people around you, to have the capacity for those things. Because there's so many people, and even ourselves in the past, who, like you said, you didn't have capacity to grieve. I didn't have capacity to, I remember I was in an abusive relationship and I was like, I don't have the capacity to think about that right now. I'm in college. I don't have the capacity. And I was in that relationship much longer than I should have been. Capacity is peaceful. And what we do with that capacity, yes, sometimes it's not always going to be frolicking in the flowers, but it's important. And we should be grateful that we have it, which is why in Jasmine's skyline view apartment in a gorgeous city, I was like, you should be happy you can cry in the middle of the day.
No, really. I think I've processed, as you both very much know, I've processed more emotions this past year specifically while having the most amount of free time and made the most amount of money. I think, to your point, because of the capacity that I had to do so, it almost like sheds a new level of awareness. Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I think it also like made me tap into my identity a little bit more, because I was no longer feeling like I need to cover that through work. Mm-hmm. Like work was no longer the only, like my only identity, mm-hmm. even though I love what I do. I love my business. It just no longer felt like it was such a core part of me, and that it was the only part of me.
Something I want to talk about is going back to peace's work. Something that happens is, again, I talk a lot about peace, and my whole thing is I actually have a peace framework: part-time team, easy systems, anxiety relief, calendar space, elevated offer. And people will come into my program, $1 Million CEO, and they're like, wait a second, this is a lot more work than I thought. Tell me about the team and systems work you all have done and continue to do to create peace, right? And was it worth it? Because a lot of it too is I have to remind them, like, this is what you're working toward. And this is, especially in the initial, because at some point it becomes maintenance. It's routine, it's easy, right? But like in the initial, when they're first starting with things, the hiring, the systems building and things like that, they're like, this is work. I'm trying to be peaceful. I'm already at capacity. I got to work to create capacity, but I'm at capacity and I don't want to work. Tell me more about that for you all in your experience. Dielle said, I'm still working on it.
No, I think, what specifically? Like how a team helped create capacity and peace?
Let's start with wanting to getting yourself to want to do the work. Because I think team and systems, like it, you've said this before. You're like, it's one of those things you got to sell people on a little bit in terms of it can feel not as fun for some people. For me, I love it. It's not
sexy.
I eat it up. Right. But for some people, it's not sexy.
To me, it's all about the movement. Like hiring more help, getting your back end together will help you with your movement. And I think too, going back to peace, if you know when you're selling something, when you're working with a client, when you're on a coaching call, when you're doing something that you actually do enjoy, but in the back of your head, you're like, oh, but I have to do this and I have to get this document and I have to get this over here and I have to also show up here and this automation didn't work and I have 6 emails to take care of and I need to reschedule this person, then you can't have peace in the things that you actually enjoy. So then you need a team member. You need the systems to help you do the things that you actually like doing. So I think like it's all about the movement. Like it's all about doing the activities that help you achieve the goals that you want. And you're going to need some help. But I think so much, like I have traveled so much this year. I've traveled solo this year. I've traveled with friends this year. And I couldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for team systems and mindset. Like I really wouldn't. Like I have people to coach for me. I have people to answer emails for me. I haven't written a social media piece of content in I don't know how long, years. Like there are so many things that I don't have to do and that I can spend more time doing the things that I enjoy because I focus on team and systems.
Something you did really well throughout the process, because I remember, at first when we started working together, you were like, I don't, like my team should know what to do. Like they've been in my business long enough. They should know what to do, even if they don't have an SOP, etc. And then you swung the opposite end and you made like a lot of SOPs in detail. Too many SOPs, but it's okay. Too many SOPs. But I remember throughout that process, to the point of romanticizing, you were like, you gave yourself the result that the SOP would create to keep you engaged. So I remember you were writing these detail event SOPs and you were like, this is going to make it to where I don't have to talk to my team the day of my event.
Yeah.
And I noticed like, you were like, this is so good. This is going to make it to where I don't have to talk to my team the day of the event. So I think, you know, for
and
whatever,
our events run very smoothly day of.
so smoothly. I was at the event. I was on the back end. You barely talk to your team. Like, I don't think even at all, except for here's where to put you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of it too. It's giving yourself the result of something will actually motivate you rather than I need them. Because that's a lot of it is people are like, I know I need them. I know I need SOPs, or I know I need automations, or I know I need.
You have to your point, you have to
lead.
think about what is the experience that you want in your business, and people don't do this enough.
Right.
People don't think about the experience that they want in their business,
Yeah.
and then they're burnt out.
Right.
Then they're burnt out and sad because the
Right.
experience turned to negative.
Right.
You then have to think about how I can move in my business in a certain way that could really be supportive and expansive.
Yeah.
So I think about a couple of things. One, I don't think this conversation is normalized. There is nobody publicly talking about team systems mindset. We have the systems people that are talking about it from a perspective of like the done for you element, like we're going to help you set this up, but no one's really talking about.
She knows she knew.
Listen, nobody doing it like me. And it's all the same things too. It's all it'll save you time. It'll
No,
save you
but
money.
because
and I'm like, that's not enough for these people.
But because-
they need more. Trust me.
And because the lack of conversation, like it also translates to like lack of awareness in a way, to your point, to where they're not even sitting down thinking about the experience because they're so focused on like, well, how am I presenting myself outwards? Who cares if my back end is a mess? I want to think about like,
oh, no. Sorry, I just never thought that. And it's just.
some people are still very much in that beginner scarcity mindset of like, I just need a VA. I don't need to be doing all this fancy stuff. I don't need to learn this, especially for the people that aren't naturally systems tech oriented. I think about like a new thing being released on Instagram and nobody wants to jump in on it until everyone else can claim that it's safe to do so. For me, I want to take the angle of like leadership because I'm Kirsten's top student. I eat her portal and philosophies up. Okay, whatever this girl tells me, I'm like, yes. But I think that for me, I came into you, I remember on our sales call, I thought my team was pretty good. I had team members.
You were like, I'm actually okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I literally
I was
remember, I'm like, yeah, just tell me why I need this. But I remember telling Kirsten, like, I actually wanted more time to be creative outside of my clients' businesses. I was spending a lot of time being creative for my clients and not enough time being creative for myself. But to that point, like, I was like, I have SOPs, I have systems, I have all the quote unquote right team members. And there is so much more involved that allowed me to step into being a stronger leader, releasing control with my team. And a lot of this are things that I was doing with my team that I also know I was doing in my business overall. I was micromanaging my team. I was being a little bit more controlling. I wanted to be on top of everything. And that alone was taking capacity for me to do other things in my business that only I could have the time to do.
You also, going on to motivation, actually, Jasmine she loves SOPs and systems. It's like I had to tell her like you're doing too much. Same thing. Now I can't stop Dielle from creating an SOP. But you were hesitant. It was hard at first to have the motivation to hire because you thought it was, and I'm being exaggerated, but like you did think it was like impossible to find somebody that could do what you did. I
think that was the mistake, was comparing myself to somebody who could quote unquote do what I did.
Right.
And nobody ever could. I to that point, I told Kirsten a lot of things were impossible, yet here I am.
No, literally. Everything I tell her, she's like, impossible. I'm like,
no, it's
this
too
is her
hard.
Process. It's
My
okay.
industry is niche. Nobody can do it. And to that point, I think like even with you, Dielle, I take pride in like being a strong leader, being one of a kind, being saying that I'm doing something different. And like, yeah, of course no one's going to do it like me or do it the way that I do. But I think I learned so much through finding the right person and also just being more clear on what is it that I actually do want from this person, that I hold myself to a standard. I think for the longest time, it was hard for me to even articulate what my style, quote unquote, was, or even hard for me to articulate, like, what is the thing that makes me good? I couldn't like define what made my creative direction so brilliant. No, because I
her trauma blocked it out. I said, then you're not that good.
Yeah.
I said, you probably find someone better.
The stuff Kirsten has said to me, y'all.
I was like, shut the agency down. You're not that good. You're not as good as you thought.
She told me to shut my business down.
Again, this is why my client, I can't blame them. They're like, this is not peaceful.
But to that point, I could have been angry. I could have taken that feedback very personal. I could have literally ghosted the program.
Yep.
After that, I could have been like, she don't know. Like, I'm done with this. I'm over trying to explain myself, which I think is so natural when you get low-key the feedback that you really need, even though you don't like. And I will sometimes like give it a day or so to really just like process. And then I'm like, yeah, what else am I going to do? I don't like doing this. I don't like working the hours. I want to spend my time doing that. Like, what else am I going to do? This is my solution.
Yeah.
I think for me, something that really clicked with team, and you were talking about this, like, what do you want them to do? We don't see the team member as an extension of our desires. Like, you can have this person do anything you want them to do. You're paying them to do anything. That blew my brain. Like, if you want your calls to be run a certain way, if you want your back end to be a certain way, my team is building out this really amazing client dashboard from scratch. I'm so proud of it. And I was like, I don't like how the buttons look. Change the buttons. It's like those little itty bitty things you like. I think like really thinking about it from this place, so many of us put our team members into a box often because they have thoughts, right? And I want you to talk about like not believing your team. I think that's so important.
Yes.
But our team members might show hesitancy. They might show a lack of confidence on doing something. And so being like, no, you can do it. And I want it done this way. Yeah. That's not bitchy. That's not being mean or anything like that. But it's like you are paying this person to do what you need them and what you want them to do. I remember with like my executive assistant, I was like, I already paid for this high-end restaurant in New York that I wanted to take my friends to. Everything was the car service, everything was set. 2 hours before, I was like, change of plans. Don't want it anymore. I want to do this instead. And she changed everything and made it happen. And so I just think like you get to be catered to in that way as a CEO, and like you get to be taken care of in that way.
I was just going to say, I think like a fault that I had too was expecting team members to care just as much as I do, knowing that that was never going to happen. I actually realized that I didn't necessarily need them to care about the business. I just needed them to care enough about like what I was asking them to do.
I have so many angles I could take with this, because there's the CEO and their side of it, and then there's the team member and their side of it. And what I appreciate, and you know this, especially Dielle, I'm able to oscillate between the two. For one thing, I've been the team member, so I'm able to oscillate between the two, and it's a few things. Where do I start? Number one, I think it starts with, if you want to be able to have a team that you can tell what to do, you need to be a leader that they want to work for.
Absolutely.
And in order to be a leader that they want to work for, you need to be peaceful. Because we could do an entire 3-hour podcast on how when I wasn't peaceful, how I led my team, what it caused them to do, what it caused me to do, all the things. It was a mess because I wasn't peaceful. When you become a peaceful leader, you have the capacity to do what Dielle was saying, which is to ask questions. And something that you had mentioned is something that I say in my program, which is like, you don't always want to believe your team right away. And here's what I mean by that, because it sounds like crazy, right? When you don't know. What I mean is sometimes a team member, you'll give them a task and they'll say, I'm not going to be able to do that in that time frame. And immediately we'll say, oh, okay, no problem. Yep. Because we don't want to be like mean. We don't want to be pushy. We don't want to be whatever. We don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want them to burn out because we burned out, blah, 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 all the things. But when we have capacity, we can just ask a question, right? We can just say, oh, what would you need to get it done then? Or, oh, why is that? Can you tell me more? Because then there might be a system that you need to update. There might be maybe you can figure out later how you can delegate it so that it's easier, it can get done or whatever. And so that's what we mean by don't believe your team right away. Like, don't just take it at face value and then not say anything and just say, okay, no problem, because then they're leading you.
I have a really good example.
There needs to be like a balanced relationship there. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's small. A team member said, oh, I don't know if I can get this video project done. I don't know if I can get it done. I said, why? And she said something. She said, I'll have to like sit and think about, should I send it to this video editor or that video editor? Mm-hmm. And like that question was the thing that was like spitting her out, being like, I'm going to have to research and like ask them. And I said, choose person A. Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh, okay, sounds good. And it was just like, imagine if I was just like, oh, to your point, like, oh, I couldn't. Oh my God. And so I think like that's really important.
Yeah. And you need to have the capacity to do that, because again, if you don't, then you're like, oh, it's fine. I just got to get it done. I don't have time to like be talking about this or do that or go back and forth, or I don't want to micromanage. You're just asking a question. It's not micromanaging. That's a whole other conversation. But go ahead, Jasmine.
Well, I was going to say on that note, I have really been trying to focus on helping my team members become better decision makers in instances where something like this comes up, or even something with the client comes up, that they also don't have to rely on me for everything. But because in a way, I actually want them to be leaders in their role. Mm-hmm. Because I could eventually see that they have to manage multiple different areas or work with other people and collaborate with other people. And it can't always be on you to like handhold your team every step of the way. Mm-hmm. And this is something that you also, I think, like highly advocate for, is where is it on the like team member's responsibility to want to be that leader for you and also to improve their skill set enough?
Going back to what you said, which is like, they just need to be passionate in the task that I give them, or they just need to want to do the task that I give them, right? I think we were all forgetting, like, we pay our team members, they're delivering a service. In my community, it's primarily contractors only. So these are contractors with their own businesses that deliver services. They want their clients to stay, right? And like, we forget that. Right. Yeah. So
they don't want to be fired.
Speaking as the team member, absolutely. There's times where I was like, I can't do that because my brain, I'm running your whole business, or I'm doing this and and I'm human. And sometimes I just have like a limiting belief about my ability to do something, whatever. Or like, I don't have the capacity to think about how I can figure that out. And so I've been that team member, but guess what? I want to retain a client. So when the person says, but you got to do it, then my brain gets it. Well, now we got to make some capacity to figure this out, right? Whatever it is. And of course, all within scope. I can hear the service provider's brains, all within scope, right? But, I think we forget that, they want to deliver the best possible service, deliver the result they promise, because they want to keep you. They want to retain you as long as possible. Long-term clients are the bread and butter for service providers.
And I think there becomes like a mutual respect.
Yes.
Because being a service provider myself, and I used to talk about this a ton in my content, but I think sometimes like service providers themselves immediately position themselves as like secondary to a coach, especially in like that contractor relationship. And so they already have like their own mindset things going on about that specifically.
Yes.
When instead it's like, you can be equals if you also just communicate and set the tone.
I'm glad you said that.
And also give respect in the way that you would want it to be received. Like, you can be a high paid contractor, service provider, etc., and have amazing relationships with clients that are coaches if you don't even just put them on that pedestal.
I'm glad you said that, because something that I say a lot, I have clients that are like, I'm scared that I'm overworking them, or I'm scared that I'm doing this. I'm like, first of all, they're delivering a service that you paid for. Let's start there. But you're scared about overworking them. Work just as hard as them, which is what goes back to, I never feel bad about my team having to work because I'm working. We're all working. Everyone in the company is working, right? And we're all doing our respective roles. And I think this is where it goes back to, and you've talked about this a little. You said you wanted me to touch on this, like survivor's guilt, where you feel like, you know, oh, like I feel like I'm making more money, and which you don't have to be, by the way. There are service providers that you can hire that are making more money than you. Like that's not necessarily always the case, but when you are, I'm making more money and I have more time and I do this and I do that. And I always tell my clients, I'm like, they could be doing the same thing. So what I do is I show my team that they can prioritize their piece too, meaning when, for example, let's say we had like a really crazy launch that was super intense for everybody. It was like a lot of work, let's say. When we're doing our launch evaluation, sitting there with them and saying, hey, like, if you wanted to not have to do this last minute, how can we make sure you don't have to next time? How can we make sure this doesn't happen next time? All those things. So you're not just putting your piece first. You can also put your team's piece in there too. However, going back to mothering your team, they can take vacations. They have their own business. They can go make more money. They can get more clients. Everybody, like, it all goes back to like everybody gets to do what they want to do and they're all making decisions. And that's not on your shoulders as the CEO. That is such a frustrating thing about in like the leadership coaching community around like, how do I say this? The whole like, being a good leader means prioritizing work, showing them work-life balance and giving them a good job and giving them the. And I'm like,
no, that's not your job.
Right. I'm giving them and I use easy from the standpoint of I'm giving them an easy place to work from the sense of, I'm not saying the work is just, you know, easy. I'm not saying that flippantly, but it's a systematized process. They know exactly what to do. Daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, everybody knows what to do. They get to clock in, they get to clock out.
I think that's where, like, again, like responsibility and them taking ownership of that role comes in. They at any point, like, I know that I can be a tough leader, but I also say, like, they are absolutely not obligated to be here. Yeah. They are more than welcome to continue to sign more clients, to whatever. And at some point, if it does get too difficult,
they get to leave.
They get to leave.
They get to leave. And as a service provider as well, I remember after I stopped offering certain done-for-you services, I blamed my clients for all my pain. I blame Dielle's rolling her eyes because she was the one that had to coach me through it. I blame them. I blame them for my burnout. I blame them for everything. And I was like, Kirsten, the whole time you had the choice. They didn't respect me. They didn't care about my work-life balance. They didn't care about my family because they canceled early.
And it was because I was an OBM. If I was a coach,
they'd respect me. If I did this, they'd respect me.
Your coaching clients do the same.
Right. Coaching clients do the same. And so, you know, it just all goes back to, like, I always had the choice and reminding myself, like, I made the decision to work all day and night and not take a beat, systematize my process a little bit. Or I made the decision to not take vacations because I thought I needed to do X, Y, Z. I made those decisions. That was never on my client. It was never on the CEO. They're not in charge of my anything.
I think like so much goes back to leadership and desire. Like, do I want this client on my roster? I can remove them. Do I want this team member? I can remove them. Like, I think so much of business, we just replace our 9-to-5 mentality into business all the time, where it's like, we have to put up with this and we have to do it like this. And you really don't. You really don't. But I think too, going back to people don't know how to think, I see so many CEOs that do not know what they want, and it grinds my gears. It grinds my gears to no end. I remember I showed like the slide on like how you would talk to just a VA. And I was like, you can either say, hey, I want you to set up this social media Notion template. Can you please get it done by next week? Versus, I want the social media Notion template to include these 4 content pillars, get last month's content the past 90 days fill it in. I also then want you to go speak with this Notion expert that I already paid for. Here's the link to book a call with them. And then I want you to check in with me in a week. And then our next team meeting, we'll review. Like, are you being that specific and that detailed? And before someone could easily hear what I just said and be like, okay, how do I do that? How do I delegate? Do you know what you want first?
Yeah.
Do you know how
I call
you
it
want?
systems dreaming.
Right.
You got to dream first.
Do you know what you want?
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember in Kirsten's program went through a whole era where I kept telling you, my team isn't getting it. I keep training them and they're not getting it.
Oh,
they're
my
not
goodness.
understanding it.
My
They
trauma
can't
blocked
pick
it
up
out.
on it. I had different eras.
So many eras.
So I remember, like, I kept saying that, and to Dielle's point, like, I think I just wasn't getting so specific. I even remember you were like, do you know what you want? You don't even know how to articulate what does good design mean? And that actually, with both of your kind of like coaching on that pushed me to get so creative with how to articulate it, what I can expect. And now I also feel like my own processes are so unique that even my team members that come in and get trained on them, like the powerhouse way, if you will, they're like, oh my God, this makes it so much easier. I can understand. We get less client feedback, get less complaints. Like, so many things just start to happen better. And it could have been so easy for me to just continue like pointing fingers. So going back to like, you have to really know what you want, what you're looking for, to just really like explain it.
And I think it can stress people out in that some people will ask me like, okay, do I have to like always line by line it out with my team? Like, when are they gonna be able to just like get it a little bit, right? And you will get there, first of all, absolutely. But also the way you get there is if the CEO and the team member both know how to ask questions to each other, you will have a peaceful delegation experience. So, for example, we are doing a huge systems migration in my company. We are like doing a massive migration, basically. We're changing systems, multiple actually like very important systems, a whole thing. And my OBM and I have been going at first, like I wasn't fully sure what I wanted, but I had some bullet points. But I taught my OBM how to ask me questions. I said, these are the questions you need to ask when I'm, right? When I'm working something out like this. So, you know, I laid it out and I didn't just say, go build it or go figure or go whatever. No, she came back with a list of questions. And then I was like, okay, I have questions now. I asked them questions back, and we've been going back and forth, and it's only been a few days, right? This isn't taking a long time. It's not taking a ton of my time. We've been going back and forth before we initiate the project. We're going to have the best and smoothest possible system migration that we've ever had, even though it's the most extensive that we've ever had, because we're asking each other questions. And a lot of times what happens is the CEO says, I don't want to have to lay all this out and because I'm tired and I don't want to have to whatever, just take it and do it. You're the expert. And then the service provider will say, yeah, I'm the expert. I'll go do this. And then the CEO gets the project and is like, I don't like this or I don't like that. And now we wasted all these payroll hours. Now we have to redo it. Now it's a whole other thing. You're bottlenecking your company. It's a whole thing just because nobody's asking each other questions. So I say that to say you also don't need to be right away the perfect, like the person that knows exactly how to dream it up and delegate. Rather, you're going to need to know how to be a good question asker and how to have your team be good question askers as well.
To that point about like, let's continue to sell people on the power of delegation, I have realized that I need, and this is something that I just realized, I need 2 hours on my calendar just to delegate, just to talk to the team, just to figure out what do I want, and to spend time communicating with them. And someone could be like, well, then what's the point? Why do you have to carve out time in your schedule? 2 hours of delegation will save you 20 hours of work.
For 20 hours of work and money saved.
Yes.
I cannot tell you, in my I call it like my unpeaceful era. In my unpeaceful leader days, how many projects, Jasmine did one of them, that a whole website that never saw the light of day, how many projects got initiated, completed, that never saw the light of day? And I wasted thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to take 2 hours to sit and make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I recently just did this. I was frustrated with how our content was being put out.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent, it was at least $8,000 on this amazing build. It was an amazing build. Use it to this day. But then now I was like, I don't even really want to do this. What I really want is to do more video content and have more reels go out.
Yeah.
And so we're like, are we going to be using this? No.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I should have asked myself more questions instead of just making these brash decisions that my team worked hard on, I spent money on, and it ended up, it just sits there now in my Google folder.
And you're like a very creative visionary type who likes to execute quickly. And for your CEO archetype, I've told you this, I like to take the 60 to 90 day approach where it's like
killer.
No, that's
kill
the 90 day.
90 days.
No,
Yep.
I will think of something.
I'm
Yep.
like bubbling.
Right. No, because I will think of something and want it to happen next week.
No, because y'all get all inspired. You're too engaged. You're too
Uh.
disengaged. No. You will get so inspired, and then I'm like, you have to table that idea for 90 days, and if you still want to do it, execute it. How many ideas?
No, I feel that way. Like we're transitioning out of Slack and we're going to Circle. And I've sat with this for 6 months. It feels grounded. It feels clean.
Yep.
We have a process. Everyone feels good. We're not rushed. So I know what it's like, but it's not my preference. It's hard. It's hard.
To that
It is hard.
point, being overly engaged in something like this, to me, shows me how disengaged I am in so many other areas.
Mhm.
And I'm like grasping at the first fresh thing that comes to mind, like, ooh, okay, something to do, because I don't want to work on the stuff that I already know I'm technically
wow.
You're buffering with systems builds.
That's wild.
No, one thing about I
do.
just told Jasmine that she was like, "What do I need to do to double my revenue?" I'm like, "Slow down on the systems."
Just like enough training.
And it's so funny because people think that a team and systems program like would never say that,
Right.
and I'm like, actually, we're forgetting about the leadership piece.
Yeah.
It is not in your best interest as a leader, right, to always be tinkering with your systems and with your, right, there's a time and a place, and knowing when that time and place is important. And I remember telling you, I was like, you need to be focusing on what you wanted when you came in the program, which was creative space to think about XYZ.
Yeah.
Not, let's create a new dashboard. Let's do this. Let's do that. Not that she's not, here's the issue is the people like this are like, but I'm not creating it. And I have the team.
That's the problem.
And they have
That's
the
I'm like, they're
hours.
so good. They'll
they
whip
have the
something out.
hours.
No,
They'll
my
crank it out. They're so good.
I don't want to waste the hours that
Yeah.
I paid for.
When you
Yeah.
have the team and you have the money, it becomes so easy to make
Yeah.
those decisions so quickly, too.
That's the issue. That's the issue.
It is the issue.
And some of y'all are willing to pay overage too. You're like, I'll pay overage. It's fine. I got it. I have extra. And I'm like, no,
yeah.
that's not the point.
No, I remember when we were talking about something about my group program, and I was like, oh yeah, it'll cost like 25K for me to do this. I'm like, yeah, I should do this in June. You're like, calm down.
Yeah.
Take 6 months. Wait till June.
Right.
Let's just figure it out.
You're not doing this right now. And I wish I did that
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah.
So many things. Like I said, the website, RIP Flex Your Funnel. Flex Your Funnel. That cute little website never saw the light of day. Never. And I spent thousands of dollars, worked so hard on it.
Kirsten's
All 'cause
feedback, back and forth.
Back and forth. I mean, Dielle knows what the design feedback.
And it wasn't even...
Didn't even get launched. I was trying to do a template shop for those that are wondering.
The templates.
The service provider, it's a canon event. Like the service provider to like template shop, burnout to template shop pipeline is, you can't stop it. It just has to happen. It just... And then I took a minute to sit and I was like, I don't think I should do that. This was so good. And so thank you all so much for talking about this and having this conversation. I love the opportunity to talk about peace. And as you all know, I firmly believe no peace, no growth. Like if you don't have peace, you're not going to grow. And if you do grow, you are going to cap out and be one of those people that ends up burning it all down and then coming to me and saying, hi, I burned it all down. I'm the healing high performer. So we don't want that. We want to be able to keep people in business. That's a huge part of my mission, is like helping people scale to 1 million peacefully and keep the millionaires in business. And so you all are a great example of that. Thank you for being on. Thank you so much for listening to the Don't Get Mad, Go Make Money segment. And I hope you enjoyed the episode.